Hey everybody, Dave here. Hope you're having an awesome day. So my buddy just got back from Mexico for Christmas vacation, and he brought back the little capsules that go inside of the Kinder eggs. Now, Kinder eggs were outlawed in the U.S. with the plastic capsule because this capsule is actually inside of the chocolate egg, and I guess American kids eat the whole thing and swallow this. I don't know. Anyways, he brought me back these little capsules because he thought they were pretty cool. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, that would make a super cool robot. So that's what I want to build. A really simple little robot from a Kinder egg capsule. So come on, let's do it. Okay, so when I start a build, the first thing I do is I go and I kind of rummage around my bits boxes. I've got a whole bunch of little Tupperwares and bins with all kinds of little components and pieces. And I actually spend quite a bit of time just playing with those pieces, laying them on there, looking at it, moving them around, and just thinking through. I don't often sketch out the entire robot. I did a little bit of sketching for this one, but a lot of times I'm just thinking like, could I use these Lego bits for something? And so just thinking through the process, and then I start working on it. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, just thinking through the process. So the first thing that I start with is some final faction feet, but you can see there's a little bit of a lump there, and this one here I've already cleaned up on the right hand side, so I need to clean up the left foot. And what I'm doing is I just sanded that down, and again, a lot of this is just a little bit of elbow grease and work. Then I'm looking at some polystyrene tubing. I had a smaller piece and a bigger piece. I'm looking at the bigger piece. And originally I thought that was going to be a little too big, so I did a lot of work with the smaller polystyrene. Ends up in the end, I went back to the larger tubing just because it seemed to work better for me. So doing a little bit more cleanup on these final faction feet, and I just took a Dremel and kind of carved out a little half circular piece there. I'm using a Lego piece here. And this was kind of the point where I realized the bigger polystyrene is going to work better for me, so I went ahead and did the same kind of half circle dremeling on the larger piece of polystyrene. I'm just doing some test fitting, did a little bit of hand sanding and got everything to fit pretty flush. And I'm liking the look and feel of this, so I'm going to try and figure out if I can use these Lego pieces for the connection to the body, because I've got this cool little peg. If I clip that in there, and if I put that in the side of the body, that's actually going to allow that leg to pivot back and forth. So I think this might be an interesting little solution. Now for the eyes, I went through all kinds of little pieces of tubing, and it ended up looking too much like a minion to me, and I was like, I don't want him to be a little minion. So I found this little Lego piece that was just a scrap Lego piece from another build, and I think that's going to work out really nice. Actually, it has a little hole in the bottom, so I'm taking some guitar string, and if I put this on here, I think I can drill a little hole right there, and that'll be pretty sweet. I'm going to take one of these beads and I'm going to drop that in there to actually act like a little lens. I'm doing a little sanding prep work, but before I finish that up, I want to find where to drill my holes for the legs. Now, in order to do this, what I did was took a piece of scrap paper, found the halfway point on the front and the back, and I just made a little mark. Then I took a piece of scrap paper, in this case a sticky note, and I wrapped it from the back to the front. And in this case, I already have my mark on here, but I just wanted to show you. Once you have your two marks, you can actually align those, fold it in half, and that'll give you the center point. Now what I do is I just go back to that mark again, swing it around, and there we go. Perfect placement for the holes. All right, so I'm using these calipers, and again, it's in millimeters, but it doesn't matter to me because I just need to know the size drill bit I need, and it's 4.6 based off of the Lego piece, and that's going to give me a perfect size hole. So I'm drilling that out, and I'll trim that. And then as I'm putting this Lego piece in, I'm realizing, oh no, something's not right here. The piece was angled up at a weird angle. I'm like, that's not going to work. And then I realized, oh, you know what? I think there's a second layer of this egg inside there. So I was like, no big deal. Just got my X-Acto blade, did a little slice in the front, a little slice in the back, then we'll cut it across the top there, and now that gives a nice little opening. I can close that up. That little peg fits right in, so that's going to work out really nice for me. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to duplicate the same thing on the other side, and I was playing with this peg, and I was like, wait, are these? No, they're both the same size on either side. So I got that peg put in, And what's really cool is I'm gonna be able to take these Lego pieces, click them in, and those legs are gonna swivel back and forth and give me some really nice movement. I was looking at these little pegs and I thought, oh man, they're really flimsy and kind of wimpy, so maybe I'll hot glue them or super glue them. And then I realized, oh wait, I have this polystyrene tubing that I can use, and it has a really nice fit between the two. And what that's gonna give me is a nice rigid connection between those pieces. So I'm just loading in some super glue here. Then I'm gonna take that piece, trim it down, and then I can just slide that right in, and I'll let that set up. And again, that's gonna give me a nice connection between those 2 points. Now the Lego piece for the eye, there's not a lot of surface area to glue this on, and I'm afraid that it will just pop off. So what I did was I just took some Magic Sculpt. It's a 2-part epoxy, and it hardens in a couple hours. So I mixed it up, smashed it in, trimmed it down. I added a little bit more to that, but what I did was I just put it on the bot, let it dry overnight, and I had a really nice hard surface of glue to the next morning. So that turned out really well, and I didn't have any problems with that falling off. Here I'm just lining up the guitar string, drilled a little hole with my drill bit, bent the guitar string, and like I mentioned earlier, this Lego piece has a little hole in the bottom and it slid right in perfectly. And I actually have a really nice tension fit here. Don't really even need to glue this down, so this is working out pretty well. I am looking at this connection point there, the hole, and I thought, maybe I can do something cool. And I took a little drinking mixing straw, and I cut it, and I put it on there, and it just looks really bad. So I'm gonna think about that and come up with another solution for that. So back to the feet, I ended up ditching the Lego piece, and I used a piece of water tubing that I just got at Home Depot. It was a little bit bigger and worked out pretty nice for me. Gluing on the polystyrene, I made them a little short and stocky, and so those pieces are pretty small. What I'm doing here is I'm filling some super glue on the inside, and I'll take some baking soda and I'll just drop that in there, and that will actually give even better adhesion so those little pieces don't pop off, just because I don't have a lot of surface area. So here I'm putting a little bit of glue on the feet, and then I'm just gonna set him up on that. I'm gonna let it sit there for a little bit and let that set up. Now that it's set up, I'm kind of just looking at the bot and I'm thinking through some of the details. I didn't go crazy with my details on it, but I did have these little beads, and I thought if I added just a little bead above the lens, it might act as like a secondary lens or a light sensor. Put another bead on the inside, and that's just giving a little bit of dimension inside of that lens. Now for the back, I was playing with different parts. I have these electronic pieces, and I was like, that's not quite right. I had this little tank from a model kit, not quite right. And I found this piece of an earbud, and I was like, that's kind of interesting. I kind of like that. I gave it a little bit of sanding just so I could get a surface area to glue onto. Anytime you can sand something to get it to stick a little bit better, it always works to your advantage. So I got that glued down, just aligning it up. And I really like the look and feel of this, but I didn't think about one thing. This little guy is pretty light, and he doesn't stand up now. So I was like, oh boy, that's not good. Fortunately, I didn't glue this guitar string in, so what I was able to do is just open this up, and what I'm going to do is put a weight in the front, and I have just a piece of old metal, and I'll just hot glue that in. I had this little tank gear thing, and I believe it goes onto the tread. I just drilled a little hole onto that. I actually sanded it down a little bit flatter, but the guitar string fits really nicely there, and I think that really adds as a nice connection. And again, I'm keeping the detailing pretty simple on this one. Here I'm showing you I did glue it together before I showed the inside, so I apologize, but again, I just had a chunk of metal, hot glued that on there, and now, as you can see, it stands up really nice. So I feel like it's pretty stable. I'm happy with that. Drilled a couple little holes in the top. I have some polystyrene tubing. I'm just gonna drop those in. They give some nice little antennas. I love the two little antenna look, so did that. Then I'm looking at the legs. I'm thinking, needs a little something there, so took some scrap polystyrene, scored it twice, snap it. I'll take my little snips here, and again, I'm just eyeballing some little rectangles, snip those, and after I got the rectangles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them out on the leg first, just to kind of see where I want them to go, and then from there, Once I have it kind of laid out how I want, I'll take this Tamiya thin set glue. It's a polystyrene glue, and I'm using 2 pieces of polystyrene. So what I can do is just do a little dab. And what it does is it actually melts the plastic. And so you have a little bit of time to adjust these around. And then once it sets, it's solid. So I did a little bit of strip on the side there, and again on the front on both legs. And I think it adds a nice little detail. I decided I'm going to add a little hole in the back. I did a little hole in the leg, and I'm going to add a little bit of wiring just to give it a little bit more interest. Taking some silver metallic spray paint. I actually use this almost as my primer because I was thinking if I had a silver undercoat, that would be pretty nice. And then I did this blue overcoat. Now, I'm not too worried about the blue if it didn't cover all the silver, because a little bit of silver shining through would be kind of cool. And I'm doing some chipping. And I normally use silver paint for my chipping, but I wanted to try some black paint for this chipping, and I think it gives a cool little effect. So I'm going to go ahead and try this and see how it works. Never really done this before, but overall I think it's turned out pretty nice. Took some sandpaper, just knocked a little bit of paint off of that little earpiece there, and it lets the metallic shine through, and I think that gives a nice little extra effect for the backpack part. Now, you know I love my washes. And I wanted this droid to be pretty clean, but I thought, oh, maybe I'll do a little wash, and I started lathering on, and after I was putting on, I was like, it was too much. It wasn't exactly what I needed, so I wasn't happy with it. So I took this little scrub brush thing. If you wet it down and you scrub around, you can actually get some of that wash off. I was looking at it again. I'm thinking, oh, maybe I need to add some silver chipping. I used this bright silver, and it ended up being a little too bright for what I wanted in the end. So I was like, And this is kind of where I'm kind of going back and forth of like, how much do I want to do? I wanted to keep it a little bit cleaner, but now I'm kind of pushing it to be a little bit more weathered than I wanted it to originally be. But that's okay. That's just part of the process of building it, and it's working. I got this rust powder. And I haven't used this a lot either. And what's interesting is it ends up being a lot like a pastel powder, so you have to be really careful with it because a little bit goes a long way. And so I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with this, but I haven't used it a lot. So I'm looking at the leg here. I wanted to add a couple little metallic pieces to the leg just to tie it into the body. And then, sorry it's out of focus, but I did the black chipping around the foot. And there's a lot more little angles and edges, and so I think it shows a lot better on the foot, and it turned out really cool. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. Putting a little silver on the antennas, and I'm kind of looking at the bot now and thinking, what are those little things that I need to do just to finish this up? And I was looking at that little sensor that I glued on earlier, and I thought, you know what, if I put just a little dab of red on that, that will give a little bit more interest. So I'm just adding a little bit of red to that. And again, I'm looking around. I'm feeling pretty good about this, but I think maybe the feet, I need to go ahead and put a little bit of rust effect on that. And again, a little bit goes a long way. And I'm getting really close to the end. I think it's wrapping up here. So I think I'm just going to put this together, put my wires back on, my guitar string back on, and kind of pull this one together. And I think it turned out really nice, and it was not that complicated, so I like it.
Okay, that was a really fun build. And as I was working on this the entire time, I kept thinking I want to keep this as simple as possible. I don't want it to get overcomplicated, so I used very minimal detailing, super simple paint scheme, just a blue with some a little bit of silver and some black, nothing too crazy. And the cool thing is like taking just a piece of plastic that might be tossed in the trash and turning it into something cool. And you might say, well, I can't get a capsule from a Kinder Egg because they're illegal in the US. That's all right. I mean, there are capsules. Hold on, I got some down here. There are capsules all around. Like this is from a little vending machine. Here's another one from a vending machine. Like keep your eyes open to different types of packaging. And I think if you're looking for those shapes and the silhouettes, you'll actually see some cool little robots in there. So go make something awesome. And as always, it's a great day to be a toy nerd. Have a great one.